It's that time again on the channel. Yep, it seems to happen every now and then. A certain name comes up and we've got to speak about it. We've got to talk about the realistic possibility of it happening. And we've got to talk about whether or not it should happen. And it's a familiar name because it's one of the greatest names to ever be linked with Celtic Football Club. The name, simply, Larsson. This time we're not talking about Henrik, but like a few times over the past few years, it's time to talk about his son, and that's Jordan Larsson. Before we go any further with the video, I am hoping the microphone is fixed. You'll be able to tell if this is microphone audio or camera audio for today's video. I don't know what's going to happen in the editing process quite yet. I'm hoping it is fixed. If it's not, bear with me and I will get it sorted as soon as possible. But if it is fixed, hello, welcome back to the best possible quality I can offer you in terms of audio. Like and subscribe if you're new around here, if you haven't already. We are getting ever so closer to the start of the new campaign. Of course, Celtic have returned to Lennoxtown, so I will be here through it all as we prepare for what is going to be a very exciting campaign once again. But today, we need to sit down and we need to talk about one of the biggest stories in relation to Celtic right now, and it's the possibility of a Larsson returning to Celtic, the son of the King of Kings, Jordan Larsson. He is a free agent. Now, will he become a Celtic player? Can I just make my thoughts perfectly clear from the very start and from the get-go? I don't think Jordan Larsson will sign for Celtic. I don't think it will happen. There is nothing to suggest that Ange Postecoglou or the club are directly linked with him and talks with him or even identified him as a possible target. Now, these are very new developments, what we're about to talk about. That could change in the coming weeks. But I just don't see it happening. But it's well worth the opportunity and the time to sit down and discuss it. Him coming to Celtic. Of course, his father, Henrik, is one of the greatest players in the club's history. One of the greatest goal scorers in the club's history. And the possibility of his son coming in to carry on that legacy is something that gets us, you know, it gets us frothing at the mouth a little bit. It's so exciting. It's mouth-watering. And to see that name being carried on in Celtic's history is something that we certainly should have a think about. But today we're going to discuss it all. I'm going to give my opinions as to whether or not I think Celtic should make a move for Jordan Larsson, and amongst all of the news. That and a couple of other things in today's video. We're going to talk about Josip Juranovic. We're going to talk about Barkas. This could be a long one, but I want to try and get through things as quickly as possible. Jordan Larsson has become a free agent. His contract has been terminated by mutual consent over at Spartak Moscow. He's become available to anyone after, of course, the conflict and such in Russia. Contracts are all over the place. But Jordan Larsson is one of these players who has been directly affected as a Swedish international. He is no longer with a club. He's no longer playing in Russia. Now, that means, of course, there is an opportunity here for Celtic. There's an opportunity for the first time to go in and try and realistically sign Jordan Larsson. The big problem in the past few years when people have spoke about the desire to sign him and the desire to see him come in and carry on his father's name has been financial reasons. Let's be real. The possibility of him signing in recent years hasn't been really strong. He's a player who's been scoring goals. He's a player who's been building a little bit of a name. He got a decent move to Spartak Moscow. And amongst that, his valuation as a player rose to the point where Celtic were never going to be realistically in for him. They had to wait for a situation like this, a contract expiry, a contract termination, or just generally maybe some poor football that would bring his valuation down. Some circumstance had to change to make this a realistic possibility for Celtic. So now we find ourselves in the perfect place to try and sign the likes of Jordan Larsson, where there is no transfer fee attached, there is nothing stopping us in the way of club negotiations. There is genuinely a chance for us to sit down with the player and go, listen, wee man, remember those good times your father had? Well, you have a chance to do that here too. Fabrizio Romano is reporting that the player has already received a few offers from other clubs. I've not seen any named clubs as of yet, but there are options on the table, as you'd expect for someone who carries the kind of name that he does. It's not just because he is Henrik Larsson's son, however. It's a talented football player. He's scored goals. He's a good striker. He has been playing with the Sweden setup a few times. And he's spent a few months, of course, on loan with AIK in Sweden, while the sort of disaster in Russia kicked off. So, there's obviously clubs going to be interested. I imagine AIK will be one of those clubs who'll be thinking, well, we could maybe have a go here to try and get him. So it's not going to be easy for Celtic. It's not a case of just wandering in and going, right, come with us. Your dad played here, so you know where you are. Come on in. It's not as simple as that with the other interest that is there. But the door has been left wide open now for Celtic to go in and make an approach. The fact that there is nothing standing in our way to make direct contact with the player is a very ideal situation for the club. His time at Spartak Moscow seen him score 27 goals in 83 appearances. A decent enough record for the striker who is probably just trying to get on with it now. He's 25 years old. There's been a number of years now we've spoke about him on this channel. Every sort of summer, he's a name that comes up. When we've needed a striker last year, I remember when we had the rebuild, a lot of people were saying, go for Jordan Larsson. The year before that, I remember people were saying, oh, let's go for Jordan Larsson. We need a striker. We need goals. We need someone like him. When Dembele left, let's replace him with Larsson. When Edouard was leaving, let's replace him with Larsson. It's always one of the first names people jump to because, of course, the connection with Henrik. And rightfully so, because people love Henrik Larsson. He's an absolute legend at Celtic Football Club. But I feel like that's the one thing that we have to be cautious about, is just piling on this pressure to bring a boy into the club because his father was so successful. And I'm going to wrap up and give my opinion at the end as to whether or not we should sign him. But, we need to make sure that we're looking for the right qualities in a player here. And we need to make sure he's obviously the right fit for the club. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying he will be the right fit. He likes to press, he can score goals, he can also drift out wide. That's what we see with the likes of Kyogo Furuhashi, for example. But, I don't think that Ange Postecoglou is simply going to go, there's Henrik Larsson's boy released, let's make a move for him. I think there has to be a sort of identification of what he needs at this moment in time. Celtic are blessed right now with two fantastic strikers in Kyogo Furuhashi and Georgios Giacomakis. I think that makes the situation a whole lot more complicated in bringing in Jordan Larsson. Would it be a waste of time and money? Because he's probably going to take quite a decent wage. Spartak Moscow are a club who have money. One of those big Russian sides with big owners. He would have probably been picking up a fair wage there. How much is he going to drop on wages? How much are other clubs offering him? And ultimately, what is his expectation as a player? Is he expected to come into Celtic and start? This is where my main issue comes in. Is there any justification for bringing in Jordan Larsson and then suddenly binning one of the other two strikers on the bench? Now, I think we're a club that's in a lucky enough position where we can rotate. But I don't know. I just feel like there's going to be maybe a ounce of disappointment that comes with the signing of Larsson, because on either side, either on the side of the fans or himself, because I don't know if he's expecting to come in and start every game, and then are we expecting him to come in and start every game? And what if he doesn't? There is so much expectation that could be a letdown if things don't go the way that people want to see the Larsson name go. In 2020, there was a piece in the media which showed that he did come out and say his dream move would be to join Celtic. And if he has the desire to play for us and there is interest from the club, I have no doubts that there may be some form of contact. If he's serious about being a dream move, this is the perfect time. It's probably the only time that I feel like it's probably going to happen for Jordan Larsson, when there is no financial restraints, when there is that open opportunity to speak without restrictions of clubs. This is probably the time to accomplish that dream move. The thought of him coming in and taking that number 7 shot. Now, I know Georgios Giacomakis currently has that shot. I'd imagine they'd work out some sort of deal to move him to the number 9. That's not occupied at the moment. Albion Ayeti, for example, will probably leave. That means the number 10 will probably become free as well. There is an opportunity to give Giacomakis another nice number. But the thought of Larsson 7 being a thing at Celtic again, it comes with so many perks. Right now, we all know that shirt would be the number 1 seller. Doesn't matter how well he plays or whatever, the minute he would sign for the club and they'd announce him as number 7, there would be queues outside the Celtic store to get him printed on the back of the shirt. There'd be queues around JIDs in Scotland to get him in the back of the shirt. It would pay for the wages itself, probably. And that's the financial benefits of it. But when it comes to footballing perspective, that's where I have my reservations. I'm very much on the fence. I don't think Celtic should necessarily make this happen, but I'm not saying they shouldn't make it happen. I'd be happy either way. We get him or we don't. I'm not going to cry about it. I think that him coming in would be fantastic for so many reasons. We do need a third striker. We've spoke about that. There is a sort of need to go out and maybe reinforce that area. We've got 2 fantastic ones, don't get me wrong. But I think we've all been in sort of agreement that another one would be nice, just so we have other options to turn to. Ayeti's not that guy. So maybe Jordan Larsson solves that issue. But the thing that worries me there is, how does the pecking order work, and how do we rotate those guys? I feel like if we're going for another striker, I would have liked a kind of younger player, someone who's ready to wait and work their way up, but also someone who carries talent. Larsson is entering his prime years. He'll want to play every week, but I just don't feel we're in a position right now to stop the progress of the two we have. So that's my mindset in that one. That's where I'm kind of like, And then also the pressure. Like, we are putting some amount of pressure on Jordan Larsson to come in and probably do what his dad done. And I don't think that's very fair on him. Now, I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't be looking at him to come in and score 300 goals for the club. I wouldn't be looking for him to come in and score a hat-trick every week. But I feel like people would start getting a little bit annoyed if he didn't deliver what we'd expect of the Larsson name. And it's just not fair on him. So I'm like, would it be better just to leave the legacy of the name the way it is rather than... I mean, it's never going to change anything about Henrik Larsson's perception at this club. We're still going to remember Larsson as one of, if not the greatest Celt to ever play for the club. But I just feel like, there'll be that sort of disappointment there, and everybody will get kind of down about it, and knowing our support, they'll start moaning about it. So, it's slightly, I'm kind of like, should we bother? But, I mean, the thought of a Larsson 7 is pretty good, isn't it? I think to wrap up my point finally, and my opinion of signing Larsson is, I just hope he signs for someone soon, and I hope it gets done and over the way, whether it's Celtic or not. And as I said, I don't think it will be Celtic. I'm just going to cut to the chase and say I don't think he'll be a Celtic player next season. It's just one of those ones that he happens to be a free agent. Of course, we're going to be linked with him. But I hope it is done, just so we don't need to listen to weeks of tabloids and tweets and rumours that aren't even true, linking us with the player. That's why I just want it done. I want him to sign for a club, whether it be us or not. And as I said, I'm not fussed what way it goes. Let me know your opinions. Should Jordan Larsson sign for Celtic? Should we make a move for Jordan Larsson? Let me know in the comments below. Right, that part of the video was so lengthy. I didn't realise how long I would go on about Jordan Larsson. So I do want to move on with the video, and I want to try and wrap things up as quickly as possible. Let's talk about Josip Juranovic again, just like we did yesterday. I'm not going to rehash all the points I've said in my previous two videos about Josip Juranovic. If you want to know my thoughts and things in certain situations, feel free to check those out in the channel. Yesterday's video and the video last week, there's plenty of stuff in there. But his agent has came out and given some clarification on the situation with Josip Juranovic right now. Of course, he's been linked with moves to the English Premier League. He's also been linked with moves to Atletico Madrid in Spain, and his agent has came out and said something on the matter. This is what his agent had to say. He said, so far several clubs from the 5 leagues have shown interest in bringing him in, but there is no concrete agreement. He also told the same outlet he spoke to that Celtic do not want to sell unless it's a really big offer that comes along and the price is not fixed at £15 million. So there is interest, and he said top 5 leagues. So right now all we've really heard up until this point, until this clarification from the agent, was English Premier League clubs and Atletico Madrid. But he's saying the top 5 leagues. So that must mean there's clubs in Italy, Germany and France as well looking at the potential of bringing in Josip Juranovic. He's a wanted man this summer. I think that we are going to have to be a little bit patient, and I think we're going to have to be a little bit optimistic in trying to hold on to him this window. It's going to be really difficult. The price apparently isn't fixed at £15 million. I don't know if we'd accept less. I don't know if we'd accept more. But you're looking at a player here who's 26 years of age, playing international football for Croatia, and also just playing really well for his club. He's a fantastic player. And as I said last week in my video, he can go right to the top. He can play for an Atletico Madrid. I'll tell you that right now. I'm very confident of that. So it's going to be difficult to keep a hold of him this summer. But what I will say is, I am optimistic he will stay. Number one, here was his comment on Joe Hart's Instagram yesterday. He said, see you soon. Very cute. Nice to see them keeping up during the summer. Of course, Juranovic has been off on international duty. He's still got some time off. He's not returned to Lennoxtown yet, but he will see Joe Hart soon. Now, of course he's going to see him soon because there's no move happening yet, but how long will he see him for? Well, this is my other optimistic point. I think that we can hold on to him this transfer window, but I really do see him leaving after the World Cup, maybe even in the winter transfer window. I think that's a point where we could maybe see him move on. Why? Because I think he does want to try and get the most football he can and the best possibility he can right now of playing for that Croatia side at the World Cup. And of course he can do that by playing for a big side overseas, but if he knows that he's guaranteed football, he's starting week in, week out with Celtic, I think that will be the big part on his mind. So I'm optimistic he'll stay for this window, but honestly, as soon as the World Cup is done, that's when I'll start getting nervous that he might move away. realistically, we can't really step in the way of a player moving to a club like Atletico Madrid. That's just really difficult and not really excusable. If the opportunity's there for him, I'm sure he'd want to explore that option. We just need to fleece whoever it is out of as much money as possible. I said this last week. I want £20 million. I want close to £25 million. And I don't care if you think he's worth that or not. I think that's what Celtic should be trying to get for a 26-year-old in their prime right back who's a very good international level. I think we should be trying for more than 15 if it's a club like that. At the end of the day, if we don't get it, we should be able to keep him. So that's what I expect. There's so much to consider. What happens if he does go? Who do we bring in? We need more depth than Ralston at this side. You know, there's just so much. Right now, a lot of rumours, and we just need to sit and wait and see what happens. Very patient times this transfer window, both in the incomings and the outgoings. And finally, to wrap up today's video, Vasilis Barkas was out in the media speaking about his time at Celtic. And of course, over the past 2 years on this channel, I have been a very big backer of Barkas. I have been probably the man leading the charge on YouTube for the Back Barkas campaign, and maybe the only one who stood by him in the dark times of his goalkeeping career at Celtic. But he's rattled a few cages, and rightfully so, with some of his comments. I feel bad for him. I read through the whole interview and he speaks about how difficult it was at Celtic, especially during that COVID season. And you can really feel for the guy. You can understand how difficult it must have been. Granted, it doesn't excuse how bad he was at points, but I think you can really, as a human, from a human perspective, you can understand why it would have been difficult to come into a club like Celtic with the expectation of that season to then try and settle. But he then makes a comment in which he basically says he wouldn't recommend Celtic for goalkeepers. Basically a bit of a middle finger to the club, which is quite frankly a bit annoying. I lost a tad of respect at that point in time. My Back Barkas measurer thing wasn't really at its best point. I don't know where he's getting that from. I know his experience was bad, but look, listen, you can't just blame the club on that. And to be honest, for goalkeepers, Celtic is probably one of the best places you could go. Stevie from GigPod, shout out to him. He made a fantastic point on Twitter and saying, you know, you could argue that Celtic is probably one of the cushiest places in the world for a goalkeeper to go. Apart from European football and maybe derby matches, they're not really tested. You're getting quite an easy role. And that doesn't take away from the job that some goalkeepers have done. Joe Hart, Fraser Forster, Artur Boric, all these fantastic keepers who've played for Celtic. But, you know, and realistically, you're standing between the sticks for a lot of the games as the team hold the ball. So you probably would recommend that Celtic are a place to go and build your confidence and such. But that's what he said. Let me know what you think. Probably not the best reaction to that. And that'll do it. That's me for today. A long one. I feel winded after speaking all of that. A lot to kind of digest, a lot to talk about. But Jordan Larsson, the talk of the town at the moment, will he be in contact with Celtic anytime soon? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But if you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you all next time.